Hello guys, welcome back to JD Bots. In this video, we'll be talking specifically about Microsoft Teams bot using Microsoft Bot Framework version 4 .NET Core 3.1. So, we have like three different use cases. The first one is debugging the Microsoft Teams bot. The second one is getting the data from the adaptive card. And the third one is getting the user details from the Microsoft Teams channel. So let's get started. I'll create a new project and I'll pick up the core bot template, and the name I'll give it as Teams Waterfall Adaptive, because we'll be using Waterfall Dialog model to send an adaptive card with the user inputs and then getting the data out of that. I'll place the solution and project in the same directory and I'll go ahead and create the bot. Let's wait for the dependencies to get resolved. Okay, all right, we are good to go. So there are many things in this project template that we do not need. So let me delete these files. The first two files that I'll be deleting is booking dialog and date resolver dialog. And the next that we do not need is the flight booking recognizer. And we do not need the cognitive models as well. Okay, so yeah, so I'll go to main dialog and I'll delete some of the stubs that we do not require. So I have increased the size of my workspace so that the code will be visible to you. I'm just deleting few things. So this process we are doing in our most of the videos. So you might be aware if you are following our channel. So before starting any new implementation, we just delete the stubs that we do not require. So I'm going to delete certain methods that we do not need. And also I'm going to delete the content of our waterfall dialog steps so that we'll be writing our own logic. Okay, in the end final step, we are going to leave these two lines as it is because this helps the bot to restart from the starting. Okay, so instead of leaving our methods blank because it will throw an exception and it requires this particular dialog turn result as a return value. So what we'll do, return await. So I'll do, I'll go to the next step without passing anything, just a null value. The same thing I'm going to copy and paste it here. So this bot will be in a loop without doing anything, right? Now going back to the startup.cs file, here we have some exceptions. Let's delete these two statements because we have removed the class files for them. And let me just save this. Okay, so let's build this project and see whether we have any exceptions or not. Okay, so the build is succeeded. Now we are good to go with our implementation. Yeah. So I'll create a new class file, basically a dialog class file, and the name of my class file will be user details dialog. All right, and it should extend my cancel and help dialog. Why we have kept this one? Because it helps us to cancel my present dialog and clear, like, cancel everything, cancel all the dialogues, and start the front bot from the beginning. And as well as it helps to show a menu or help options in case user just types help in between the my chatbot. So we'll not be looking all those things as of now, the interruption part. We are just implementing our user details dialog. And here I'm going to start, I'm going to create a constructor, and this constructor will have a base, name of user details dialog. All right, perfect. Now, so here we are going to use certain prompts, and the first prompt that we'll be using, text prompt. Basically we are going to use only single prompt in this implementation, and that also our text prompt will be empty prompt. So I'll be showing you how we can send an empty prompt. This helps to get the data from the adaptive card. Okay, so next we are going to create our waterfall dialog steps. I'm going to copy the syntax from here. This these three lines. Let me copy the everything regarding this one. Yeah. Okay. So here we can change our steps, name of our steps, that will be user form step. In this step, we are going to send an adaptive card. In the confirm, we are going to retrieve the data. And the final step, we are just go leave this particular dialog. And let us create the methods from out of these steps. Generate method. Similarly, I'll be hovering over the error and I'll generate a method. I'm starting from last because from last to top it starts to generate here. So I have three different steps: user form step, confirm step, and final step. Perfect. All right. Now, now what we have to do, we have to call this particular dialog from the main dialog. And what all changes we have to make in the main dialog? Let's check this out. I'll go to our main dialog, and in the intro step, I'm going to call our user details dialog. that is begin, and the name of our dialog that we want to call is the user details dialog, and we do not have any options to pass, that is I'll be passing null. Options are nothing but the data that you can pass from one dialog to another dialog. All right, and let's do one thing. Instead of restarting it, let's send the dialog. That will be better. Okay, perfect. And in that case, we do not need the final step. We can just remove the final step. Or let's make it little descriptive, and let's remove the act step and copy this particular statement and paste it here, so that in case my requirement changes, I can just comment certain code and reuse that. All right, and here I can just remove act step. Perfect. So now this intro step will be calling my user details dialog, and it will throw an exception because we have to define that user details in the constructor. So add dialog, user details dialog, and that's it. Now it is fine. We have everything in place. We have user dialog. Okay. Now what we have to do, going back to the user details dialog, in the first step, we have to read the adaptive card. So we'll be using template in this case, templating, to pass the dynamic data to our adaptive card. Yeah, that is again another use case of this one, passing the dynamic data to an adaptive card. So first, I'll just mention to the user that, okay, please go ahead and fill the form. So how do we do that? Step context.context.send activity and message factory. Wait a second. Okay, I thought why my IntelliSense is not working. It's because I haven't imported this message factory. Let me go ahead and do it. That is bot builder. And I'll mention to the user that please fill up the below form. Okay. Next, we have to mention the path where our adaptive card is present. Currently, it is at nowhere. We'll create a content folder. Let me add a new folder to our project, and the name I'll give this as content. And inside content, I'm going to create a JSON file where our adaptive card will be present. So this is of the type JSON, and the name of our file will be user details form, and add it. Yeah. So here is our empty adaptive card. Okay. So now, so let's see one thing. I'll go to adaptive card designer and pick up a template from there. so that I don't have to create an adaptive card from scratch. Okay, I'll go to the samples and let's pick something very interesting, that is input form with labels, or let's pick something input form with validations. Let's see which one is better. Okay, let's pick up this one because it's a very small form and we don't have to do much things here. Okay, so I'll try it yourself and I'll change the Teams, Microsoft Teams Lite, and this is how our adaptive card will look like in Microsoft Teams channel. And if you have changed the theme of your Microsoft Teams, then this is how it will look like in dark theme. For now, we'll focus on light theme. Okay, and the adaptive card version that I'm going to pick up is 1.5. That is the latest. All right. So here is our code. And remember, there is a slight difference between the adaptive card submission in Microsoft Teams channel and other channels. In Microsoft Teams, we have to pass a payload, a data payload, along with the submit. So if you just click here on the submit element, you see here data property over here. So we have to specify this property for the Microsoft Teams channel in order to retrieve the data, right? So what I'll do, I'll just in before setting that property, let me just copy all the adaptive card content and paste it here. Paste it in our project. Let me control V. Okay. So I have copied all the content here and I just need to add my data payload over here. So how do you add that? Let me just do it right away. So here, just add a new comma and I'll type data. In the latest version of Visual Studio, we don't have to type double quotes and it's really easy for us to add this part. So I'll open this object and you have to mention the teams, that is Microsoft Teams, MS Teams, and the type is, that is message back. So if you want to understand what is the difference between message back and one more is that what is called I forgot its name. Message back. Let me just quickly search. Bot actions. Card actions. It is cards submit actions. Bot framework. There's a documentation in that. I think this is the one. Yeah. So one of them is message back, I'm back, invoke, sign in, open URL. So these are all the submit actions you can place there. So basically we use this two most of the time, that is message back and I am back. So what's the difference? Send a message and payload to the bot from the user who selected the button or tapped the card, sends a separate message to a chat stream. And what does that mean? So when we type message back and when you, so it comes with this property display text. So when you click on the submit button, whatever mentioned in the display text that will be sent to the user in that when the form is submitted. So I'll just type form submitted. All right. And the text. So this is a text that will be passed in the backend. It will not be visible to the user. It is for the developer to understand, okay, we got the text and we have to process the data. User details submitted. You can change this as per the requirement. And the value. This is important part. Either you can have values or you can just leave it. So we'll be having values so that it will be easier for us. And the value I'll be using the same as this one. You can also send the action. So these are all the properties that you can send. And all of its values can be accessed from the bot, right? Action, then value. Okay, so I always add this particular property. Why it is useful? Let's suppose after the form submit, if you want to delete the form after the submission, then you can set this property. It's not required here, but it's for the like what we can say, without changing the source code, we can just change the property. So if I just make it as true, that means delete the adaptive card. If I make it as false, just don't delete the adaptive card. It is useful that user should not go back to the adaptive card and resubmit it, right? So this will not be implementing this particular scenario. I have just kept it so that you know that this is there, right? Okay. So this is the payload that we have to send in the backend. And what else we have? Okay, now coming to the dynamic data. We can send the title as dynamically. We can send a body dynamically. Okay, so let's do that. I'll save it. Going back to our dialog, and here we have to specify the path where my adaptive card is present. So in .NET, we use this type of convention. Instead of writing the path from the beginning, we use this type of syntax. It is really helpful for dynamic paths. User details form .json. Okay, perfect. Next, we have to create the template JSON. This is all part of adaptive card templating. So file dot, basically we are reading that file. We have to import system.io. So basically this piece of codes I have taken from the documentation. It is all there. Then we have to import this encoding as well. I'll just hover over it and import system.text. Then we have to create this template, and it is again new adaptive cards. Make sure you have installed the adaptive cards. So I'll go ahead and do it right away. I'll go to manage NuGet packages, go to browse. and search for adaptive cards. And you have to install the templating as well because that is what we are using here. All right. So let's go ahead. Adaptive cards dot templating dot adaptive card template result adaptive card template, this one, and then template JSON we have to pass. Okay, perfect. Now we have to create the data JSON. We have created the template JSON and we have to create the data JSON. If you're confusing between template JSON and data JSON, you can just come here and see here. So on the left hand side, card payload editor, this is all your template JSON that will be read. And on the right hand side, you see there is a data JSON that you can pass. Basically, whatever you define here, you can replace all those property. Let's say title will be replaced. What is the value? Tell us about yourself, and it will be replaced up here, right? So now what we are going to do is we are going to create a data JSON. So I'm going to create a card, template dot expand. I'm not going to pass a lot of data. I'm just going to pass 2 to 3 so that just to showcase you how this works. So the first property that I'm going to pass is a title. Okay, it's not capital T in our template. I'm going to use small t, and user. Okay, let's copy it from here. That tell us about yourself. Let's copy the data from there. Okay, and let's copy the body as well. Okay, so I'm going to just pass these two things so that you get an idea how to pass the data. So in our when the adaptive card will be showcased in the channel, so you'll be seeing that okay, in certain places that a dollar sign will be there. Just ignore that because we haven't passed the whole data. We have just passed two properties, right? This is just for a sample purpose we are creating. Okay. So in order to do not waste time, I'm just passing only these two properties. Now we have to create the adaptive card attachment. So new attachment, and the content type is application. These are all the things that I've got from the documentation. So you don't have to worry about all of this syntax. This is just how we create an adaptive card. If you see the dialog and welcome class file, that is where it sends a welcome message, you'll see this similar type of thing in there as well. Right? So content equal to JSON convert, since this has to be JSON convert dot deserialize it, and the card. Okay, perfect. So we are good with the adaptive card. Now we have to create a reply to send it to the user. We have our adaptive card ready. We have to create a reply. Message factory dot attachment, and here we have to pass our attachment. Okay. The next part is sending that. Await step context dot context send activity and the reply that we have to send. And remember, here we are sending it. It will not, the channel will not wait for the user. In order to wait for the user to input some data, we have to pass a empty prompt. And the name of our prompt will be text prompt. Usually we have, okay, let me just finish this off so that I can explain. Okay, here we are passing prompt options as nothing, no object is passed in that. So usually we pass it as text and retry prompt and the prompt text and retry prompt text in prompt options we pass. Now we currently do not have to pass any because we are waiting for the user to feed some data, right? Perfect. Now coming back to the final step. Sorry, got the confirm step. In this step, we are going to retrieve the data. And how do we retrieve the data? We just let me show you two quick statements. How to retrieve the form text. This is a text that you can retrieve. How I'm going to retrieve now. Going back to submit this particular text. How to retrieve this text? That is step context dot context dot activity dot text. So this particular property will contain the value of this text, that is user details submitted. Now, how do you retrieve the value, this particular object? Form data equals to step context dot activity dot value. So this will contain that, and we have to, since this is a JSON object, we have to define that. And after we define the JSON object, we can retrieve its properties using this key value pairs. Value object, and so let me typecast it. Okay, we have typecasted this. Now we can retrieve this value properties like ID, action, value, delete using this. How do you retrieve that? I'm just focusing a sample. Oops, sorry, my bad. So this particular value is for the all of them along with this. So you can retrieve these values along with these values as well. So whatever the input fields that you see, it has a ID in that. So you can retrieve this as well. So this ID. So this is the input field. You can retrieve this ID. And do we have any other input fields? Let me go back to the sample. Oh, we have only one input field. Okay, no problem. Let me change this ID so that it will be useful for you to understand it better because we already have an ID here. So it will just take like we can we can easily confuse which ID it is getting, and it will throw an exception because of these two having the same ID. So what I'll do, I'll change the ID here, and input value. In the label, I can just set it from the data. I can add a new property, label, and please input value. Okay, so we have passed the label and we have passed the ID. Okay, now coming back to here, string, what was the ID that we were using? It is input value. So your data will be coming inside these input values. So what is the input? Let me use the same variable name and same key to retrieve the data. So it is of type string and value object, and the key that I'll be passing is this input value. So I'm going to retrieve only single value. If you have multiple input fields, you can retrieve all of them using this type of statement, right? Okay. Now we have, okay, before going to another use case, let me just send this in the chat. Await step context dot send activity message factory dot text, and here I'm going to send whatever data is being entered by the user. I'll just use input value. Okay, perfect. So next, we are just going to end the dialog. And we don't need this particular step. We can just remove that step. Return await step context. Well, let's not end the dialog right here. Okay, let's end it, and after, let me come back again and change our, like, modify our use case, right? Step context dot end dialog. Okay, so our coding part is done. We are ready for testing. Yeah, let me see if I have ngrok installed on my system. Ngrok. No, it's not there. I have to download it. Quickly, let me download. Okay, Control C. Let me put that in documents and Control V. And let me extract this. Okay, from this place, I can run my commands. Let's see whether our ngrok is installed. Okay, perfect. Now, mm, we can have this type of formatting. Okay, let us search later these commands. Okay, before that, we have to deploy our chatbot. Let's not deploy it, we have to create a Azure bot resource. Yeah, so let me create that right away. I'll go to Azure. The name I'll give is Teams Adaptive Waterfall Bot. It's not a very good name, but let's keep it as it is. And let me put this in client early, and let's make it global. And the pricing tier, I'll be using free one. I don't want to get charged for the sample. And I'll be selecting multi-tenant and create new app ID and password. Okay. I'm not creating a app service to deploy because my code base will be on my local and I'll be connecting it through the ngrok. Yeah. Okay. So our bot is ready. Here we have to pass our ngrok URL. Let's search online in the documentation. Debug Microsoft. Okay. Let's not search that way. Ngrok host header HTTP. If somebody has created, let's see. Request header. No, no, this is not the command that we are looking for. It has to be in somewhere here. Okay, okay. Let me go to my website because I have created a question and I have answered some question. Okay, this is the one that we are looking for. I think I have answered it somewhere. Let me scroll down. No, I have not answered it. Actually, I have answered it. No problem. Let me copy this command because this is a command that we need. Okay. And the port that our bot will be running on is 3978. Let me quickly check. Let me run this application. 3978. Yeah, that's the port. Okay. So let's run this one. Yeah, we got the same error because there has been some changes. So it is double hyphen. Okay, okay. I have to register. Okay, okay, okay. Let me do it right away. Earlier, we used to run the ngrok freely. Now we have to register and run it. Okay. I think I had already registered, but let me just quickly check. So unzipping is already done. Let me just copy this and paste it here. All right. Let me rerun my command. Okay, so we have to verify the email as well. Let me go to my email and verify it. I think there seems to be some issues. Let's see what's the problem. So this is the URL, endpoint URL that our bot is pointing. Let me copy it and paste it here in our Azure bot. And we have to mention few things in our configuration file in order to start our bot. So these are the few things that we have to mention. I can remove Louis part, okay, and I have to enter the multi-tenant in the app type. I have to enter the app ID. I have to enter the tenant ID. I think tenant ID is not required, but yeah, tenant ID is not required for the multi-tenant bots. Okay, so I have to get the client secret as well. Let me copy it and go back to my bot. Okay, perfect. Now let's save the config. Okay, let me delete this window. Let me close that window and yeah, save my configuration changes. Yeah, and before saving, I have to mention the endpoint, that is API/messages. And before that, we have to also connect this to a channel, that is Microsoft Teams, because we are building it for Microsoft Teams. Okay, so our channel is done. Now I can open it right here. I'm doing it shortcut because I don't want to waste time in uploading the manifest. So this is a shortcut that I'm performing right away. Perfect. So is our application running? Let me rerun it and also check here in ngrok whether my endpoint is hit or not. So if my endpoint is hit, I'll be getting post 100 over here, post 200. So let's send a message, hi, so that I'll get a welcome message. Yeah, perfect. Post API messages. And there we are. We got a welcome message and we encountered an error. Perfect. Let me say hi again to my bot. Yeah. So we are having some exception in sending the adaptive card. So let's see what's the exception. Let me go. Yeah, this video is also for debugging purpose, how to debug your bot using Microsoft Teams channel and ngrok. So I have put a breakpoint here, and I'm also going to put a breakpoint in adapter with error handler, because that's the last place where this message we get the exception message. Okay, so now let's say hi to the bot and see what's the issue. Okay, so I'm going to step into. So we got the path, we got the template JSON, we got the template, we got the card, we are sending that card. Okay, send. Okay, so operation returned an invalid status code bad request. Okay, so that means we are having some issues in our adaptive card. Let me quickly check our dialog and welcome bot, and let me copy this. Go back to user details dialog and paste it here. This is to make sure whether my spellings are correct, right? And JSON convert, deserialize object. Everything is fine. Might be my data is having some issues. Title, body, label. Okay. Let's go back to our card and see if I have not done any mistakes in here. Okay, let me just remove this because the message is required. If you are using this particular thing as error message for validation, then it's a required field. So I'll remove these three properties that we don't require. And wait a second. Okay. I got it. So this is an array. So what I'll do, let's make it a single object instead of array, right? So let me paste it here, and let's remove this particular object. Title, body, disclaimer, we can just remove it. Okay, now let's see whether our bot will work or not. Let's say hi to the bot. Perfect. So we have got the input. So see here, we are passing this data dynamically, right? Okay, so now it is asking for message. Hi, I am the user. I'm going to submit it and it has to reply me the message that I have typed. Okay, it is not replying. Okay, let's debug it. What's the issue? Going back to user details dialog and putting a breakpoint here. And I'm going to show you what all properties we get it there, right? Okay, let's say hi to the bot. And let's continue because we know that, okay, our form is working fine. I am JD. I'll submit it, and see here, this form submit is the display text that you get. Okay, so form text, we got the correct value, that is user details submitted. That is the value that we have defined it here, user details submitted, right? Now step into value. So this will get all the properties for that. Okay, we got some issues. Input value, I am JD. It is coming inside input value, I am JD. That's wrong because we haven't passed the data for that input value, right? So this, let's make it hard coded, because ID, what we are doing, we are passing the ID from the code. We can pass it, but let's hard code it. Input value. Yeah. Let's run this again. And let's say hi to the bot. This is JD. Perfect. So we got the input value. This is JD. Now coming back to our another use case, that is getting the user details from the Teams channel. So how do we do that? We have a method in Teams that is used to get me the user details. And the method that is going back to our source code, and here it is. Let's do one thing. Let's do it in the next step. That is the final step. And instead of end dialog, let me do it next async. Okay. So now let's import few things, that is making the method async. Okay, everything is here. We don't have to import anything. Okay. So what does it do? Get member information, that is who is the user that has joined the conversation. So this is the particular method that will get me the details. And on the next statement, I'm sending the details like name, its object ID and email address, right? And I'm going to end dialog after this. Okay. So let me put a breakpoint so that you understand like what all things that we get from the channel. And I'm going to debug this. Going back to our bot and restarting the conversation, right? Let me remove the breakpoint from here because we know that this is working. I am JD. And we also know that this is also working. Let me continue. Okay, coming to this part, let me step over. And here, what is the variable? That is member. Let me open that member variable and show you what all things. So here, this is the object ID, this is the email ID, this is the given name, this is the full name. So, and what is the surname, and what is my user ID with respect to the channel, what is my tenant ID, and user principal is again the email, and what is the user role. So these all properties you get from the channel, right? So you can make use of this to extract few of the details from the Microsoft Graph API, such as reading their email addresses, like not sorry, reading their emails, and getting some files from SharePoint or yeah. So you can get this all the details from the Graph APIs using these details. The first thing you have to do is getting the access token, and after that you will be able to get all the details from the Graph API. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So yeah, we are here at the end of our demo. One last part, how to deploy this to Azure. It's very simple. So currently it was just on my system, my local machine. Now I'll be pushing it to the app service. Selecting the app service, and you have to log in it. And if you already have a app service, you can just select that. Or if you want to create a new one, you can go ahead and create new one. I'll go ahead and create a new app service, and let's make the okay. Let me select this one only, hosting plan. Okay, let me create a app service and deploy it there. Okay, so I have my app service ready, and I'm going to deploy it to this app service. Okay, it has created a published profile for me. I'm just have to publish it, that's all. Okay, so it will launch a URL, that is the published web page. I'm going to copy this URL, and I'll go to my configuration of Azure bot and change the configuration from ngrok to my app service. The API messages remain as it is. I have just changed this host URL and click on apply. Okay, let me quickly check if my bot is running in web chat. We are just checking if it is showing the welcome message or not. Yeah, perfect. It is showing me the welcome message. And let us see if it is working on the Teams channel. It is going to take time because yeah, it has to again send me the welcome message because a new user is joining the conversation. It has to send me. Let's wait for a few more seconds and see. If it is not sending, we'll just say hi again. Okay, let me close the ngrok here. So here, okay, it has not sent me because I think it is again using the same conversation in user ID. Yeah, Okay, no problem. I'll just say JD here. Perfect. So here you see this is coming from the Teams channel data, right? Okay, so this was all about this particular sample. Yeah, have a good day.